opening statement.
Correct, Senator.
So let's move to Senator Molan. I'm going to pull rank for the government on this one and allow a government senator to start. Senator Molan.
Thank you, Chair. Secretary, there's certainly been a lot of publicity recently on the National Commission, and it is certainly something that we need, but how would you express what the need is for an inquiry such as the National Commission?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Liz Costin, Secretary, Department of Veterans Affairs. I think we all share the same purpose, is that we need to reduce the incidence of suicide, and certainly the Department of Veterans Affairs is very committed, along with everyone, to actually see that reduced. The number that we are seeing is too high, and we've been working very closely with the Prime Minister's Advisor on Suicide Prevention, Christine Morgan, as a part of a whole of government strategy towards zero suicides. And so with the appointment of a National Commissioner, whatever it might be, Senator, it is really, really important that we're looking for solutions, and we're finding ways to reduce those incidents of suicide in our veteran community particularly.
How do you express the magnitude of the problem? I think I've heard two figures in the AGs, out of the AGs, but how do you express the magnitude of the problem?
So what we commissioned back in 2016 was a partnership with the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare to look at the incidence of suicide in our veteran community, because we really didn't know. And so they have been reporting annually now on certified deaths by suicide.
By certified, what does that mean?
That the coroner has certified that it was a death by suicide. And their reports have looked back to 2001, which is when the Australian Defence Force introduced a personnel system, which they call PM Keys, that they could access data. Prior to that, it was all single service data. So when PM Keys was introduced, AIHW was able to look into that and match that to the national death records to see those certified deaths by suicide. So they have now been giving us a report, and at this stage, between 2001 and 2018, there have been 465 certified deaths. And over recent years, we wait until the AIHW does provide us a report, but we certainly in DVA do get notified of suspected or deaths by suicide, and we do have a look at those.
How long does it take the coroner to certify death?
It will depend, Senator, on the jurisdiction, on what their workload is and how they prioritise the inquest into those deaths, and it depends on families and whether they request a coronial inquiry.
The National Commission legislation is on the table at the moment, and who is responsible for that within the ministry?
So the Attorney-General's Department is responsible for the legislation that's currently before the Senate, and that legislation they consulted on and made several amendments to that. I participated in an inquiry into that legislation, and I am aware that they made significant amendments to that. And essentially that legislation provides the powers to the National Commissioner of a Royal Commission, but it's an enduring Royal Commission. It's not just a one-off.
So that's certainly a key issue, and a lot of people are sceptical of that. But can you just clarify that for me? Does the National Commission have all the powers of a Royal Commission?
If the legislation was passed, then yes, the National Commissioner would. The interim National Commissioner, Dr. Boss, she does not have any compelling powers at the moment, but she has started the work to look at previous suicides to try and understand and do the analysis of what are the causes, what are the risks, and importantly, what are we going to do about it.
So the National Commission is independent from government?
It's independent, so she's a statutory appointment, and she is independent of government, and she makes it very clear that she is, to be honest. And the National Commissioner is supported by staff that are assigned to her from the Attorney-General's Department.
And she can make findings?
I beg your pardon?
She can make findings?
Yes, she can. Yes, she can make findings and she can make recommendations.
And she can take evidence and require that evidence?
If she has the powers, Senator, if the legislation passed, she would have the powers. She was hoping it would have been passed by now so she could conduct hearings. So she was scheduled to conduct hearings this month to actually compel witnesses to give evidence, but because the legislation hadn't passed, then she convened a research symposium here in Canberra for 2 days just recently.
And she can refer breaches of the law to enforcement bodies?
Yes, she can.
And she is I shouldn't say she, I should say it, the National Commission, is a permanent body?
If the legislation passed,
So
it is
yes.
a permanent body, that's correct, Senator.
And the National Commission can actually handle operationally secret information better than a Royal Commission, I understand.
I probably can't answer that one, Senator. I'm not too sure, to be honest. I can
Okay,
take that on notice note.
Could we have that on notice, please? And those who are in the Commission and who give evidence are immune from legal action?
I can't answer that either, sorry, Senator.
Thank you.
I'm not
Come back
across
to me
all
on
of the
that.
legislation.
They'll take that on notice.
Yes, I will.
Thank you. And it's not authorised to receive intercept information, as I understand it.
Sorry, Senator, it's not our legislation.
Okay, good.
Yep, I'll take that on notice in consultation with Attorney Generals.
And the last point I've got on this, my understanding is, and if you could take this on notice as well, my understanding is that the National Commission cannot arrest a witness who fails to appear as a Royal Commission can.
I am aware
and
that
the reason for that, I can only assume, is that because they can comply, and if someone doesn't appear, they have sufficient powers under a summons to take action.
I'm aware of that answer because I listened to Attorney General's answer that the other day where they did say that is the difference. They have no arrest powers under the National Commissioner legislation as opposed to the Royal
Because
Commission.
they have other powers
That's
to
right.
affect that.
That's correct.
Now, if the powers are the same, if not more, if the powers are the same, if not more, as a Royal Commission, why didn't we call it an enduring Royal Commission, for God's sake?
It's a decision of government, Senator. I'm sorry,
Okay,
I can't
thank
answer
you.
that.
When did the National Commission, do you have an outlined timeline for the process, for the progress of that legislation?
I don't think I do, Senator, but if I do, someone will bring that up to me, the
Sure.
chronology for the National Commission.
My memory was it entered the Senate in October of last year.
I think it's...
So, Government announced the terms of reference in September and submissions to the Legislation Committee were made in October of last year. Dr Boss commenced as the Interim Commissioner in November and we, DVA, with Attorney Generals, appeared before the Legislation Committee public hearing in November.
Yes.
And then the Senate Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Legislation Committee handed down its report in November. And proposed amendments to the legislation introduced to the Senate in December. And that day as well, Government announced revised terms of reference for the independent review, confirming the National Commissioner consider any past member, and that was a result of the evidence that was given at that hearing.
Thank you. Secretary, who amongst the veteran community has come out in support of the National Commission? ESOs or others like that?
Yeah, there are many, Senator, who have expressed that they are in support of the National Commissioner, and certainly the Ex-Service Organisation Roundtable, the majority of the presidents of those organisations expressed support for the National Commissioner, and veterans that I've spoken to have also expressed support for the National Commissioner. And I think if I can just offer that it's because they want to find solutions and they want to find answers and opportunities to address the incidence of suicide.
Would you be able to supply that to the committee of all those service organisations? That'd be fabulous.
Yes.
Support that. Thank you.
You can do that, Secretary?
I'm sorry, I missed the
Can you
sentence.
provide a full list of
Yes,
those
certainly.
organisations that support?
Certainly, because they wrote a joint
Yes.
letter in support of the National Commissioner, so we
Thank
can
you.
certainly provide that to the committee.
Thank you. And there are certainly those that don't support it, many that don't support it, in particular around petitions and other websites. And I just wanted to acknowledge that fact, and I'm sure others will speak on that. There isn't, you mentioned earlier that there is an interim process in train at the moment. What's the purpose of the interim process?
So Dr. Boss has commenced her review of past suicides, and as a result of that she has submitted requests for information, of which to Department of Veterans Affairs we've received 9 requests for information, of which they're quite extensive, to gain an understanding of what we're seeing, and particularly where we have records of suspected deaths by suicide. Neither the National Commissioner nor DVA had the names that the Australian Institute has used, because that's all de-identified. So she, in her work in the look back at suicides, has been quite considerable. And she's had many roundtables with veteran communities around Australia. She's also convened a roundtable with both the Department of Defence, and including Australian Defence Force representatives, and the Department of DVA. There were 2 separate roundtables, each about 3 hours, where Dr. Boss took evidence from us in relation to what we're doing to support the veteran community.
And you attended the DVA one?
I certainly did.
Yeah. What was your impression of that?
A very detailed examination of a range of our programs and what we're doing. She certainly explored the relationship and collaboration between DVA and Defence. There is a report on the National Commissioner's website.
Okay.
There was a transcript, and she reported her the discussion and the topics that were explored during that roundtable, and I believe the Defence report from their roundtable was also on her website.
And regardless of what happens, we won't lose that information, will we?
Oh no.
So that is all recorded somewhere and can be used for the benefit of veterans.
And some of the veterans who have participated in the roundtables with Dr. Boss have been really quite impressed with the opportunity to speak. And I spoke with a veteran the other night who just met with her. She went to visit he and his family where he lives, and he was very positive about the engagement with Dr. Boss. So she is actually doing what we hoped she would do, is try and find some ways to, as I said, reduce the incidence of suicide.
Thank you. And there's certainly been, in the last couple of days, a lot of discussion from many, including the Prime Ministers, of a Royal Commission. And what would you anticipate, or what would be the process of coming up with the terms of reference? Would that just take over the national, if it proceeded, would that just take over the National Commission? Would you just cross out National Commission and write in Royal Commission? How would that work on the terms of reference in the legislation?
It really would depend, Senator. I mean, the National Commissioner, if you were to set up a Royal Commission with the terms of reference of a Royal Commission, that would be responsibility of the Attorney General's Department to develop those terms of reference. And I would suspect the National Commissioner may still be able to undertake a lot of the review that she's doing, which I think would still be quite important to do, because she is really having a deep look into what we're doing and what we're seeing, and she is engaging with families as well. So it would depend on the government's decision if a Royal Commission was called on what would then be the role of the National Commissioner.
So there's no assumptions being made as to what a Royal Commission.
No.
People seem to think that you get a Royal Commission and it does something, but there's lots of things that a Royal Commission could do, I assume.
Well, Royal Commissions, depending on their terms of reference and the commissioners, and it will depend on what that actually looks like, Senator.
And my last question, Chair, is there, under the current legislation and the concept for the National Commission, is there anything that stops the National Commissioner looking back on what has gone in the past? No,
and that came out through the hearings on the legislation, that the actual legislation was changed so that could happen. Yeah. And that was very important. It was always intended, I think, from Attorney Generals in the first draft, but when they heard that from the community, they amended it to make sure it was quite clear it was a look back.
And certainly that people who had attempted, which is critically important,
Oh, yes.
is that in the legislation, or was that just clarified?
Yes, it
Okay.
includes those that have attempted as well, so that was important feedback from the engagement as well, so that is certainly in the legislation.
Okay, thank you. And just to conclude, I'd say that none of us really know what's going to happen now.
No.
Let's hope that whatever happens, happens in the benefit of veterans.
Absolutely, Senator.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Senator Lambie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering if you could please tell me why the wait time for assigning permanent impairment claims to delegates has gone from 3 weeks in December to now 3 months plus.
So, Senator, I'll kick off and Ms Rundle and Ms Cole will probably join me on this one. Our claims, yes, I acknowledge that we have growing claims numbers, but we're also having a growth in claims on hand and backlog. And importantly, what we're seeing is as a result of veteran-centric reform and as a result of making it easier to access and greater outreach and communication with veterans, we're actually seeing a growth in the number of veterans that we are now supporting. And it is important for us to acknowledge that back in 12-13, it was projected that we would have less than 250,000 clients that we would be supporting, and it was also projected that we'd see an annual decrease in the number of veterans coming to DVA, and we're actually seeing the opposite as a result of that greater engagement with veterans. And as a result of the larger number of veterans, about 220,000 plus now, and 100,000 dependents, we're seeing more claims. And in last year alone, we received 121,000 claims. And through that, what we've been doing is redistributing workforce and looking at processes. We've also sought supplementation for the last few years to try and get ahead of the growth in the number of claims. But in permanent impairment that you're asking about, last year we were able to reduce the backlog in our permanent impairment claims through that concerted effort and improvements in productivity. But in other areas, MERCA IL, for example, our Military Rehabilitation Compensation Act initial liability, we are seeing a growth there. And we've got a lot of statistics across the different claims types, if you'd like me to go through them and give you an understanding of what's on hand this year in contrast to last year.
No, I don't think.
No? Okay.
Thank you for that, though. I would like to know which public service servant decided in 2012 and 13, in the middle of a Middle East war and coming out of East Timor in 2000, how those numbers would actually decrease. Is there some sort of working table that, how did they come up with that? Is there a paper around that? Anyway, it's okay. Okay, I've seen reporting that there are 25,000 claims on hand at the moment, is that correct?
There's 25,000, at December last year, there were 25,035 MERCA liability claims on hand, and the year before there had been 14,000, so.
Are you anticipating that the claim numbers will continue to go up?
Yes, we are expecting veteran numbers to go up and claim numbers to go up. And particularly when we know, if we only know 220,000 veterans, there are probably another 400,000 out there that we don't know. And as you know, 5,500 to 6,000 leave each year. So there is potential that claims will go up because we have been actively engaging with Defence to connect with everyone in the Australian Defence Force from date of enlistment. And then on transition, they all receive a white card, and we're communicating about what benefits are available. We're also encouraging them to lodge their claims, particularly for that liability for injury or injury as a result of their military service. And importantly, we're asking them to lodge it at point of injury or illness because if they wait, as we saw with our Vietnam cohort, they waited 20, 30 years to lodge, and we don't know all our Vietnam veterans. We will see claims go up.
Yep, I'll come back to that because you don't have the advocates on base to deal with that right now, so we'll come back to that in a moment. Thank you for that. Has the government finally woken up and realised that having these rotation of contractors and not having the public service on those staff, on those numbers, I think I'll call it out and I'll try and say it politely, but it's killing them. Doing it this way of having contractors and not putting public servants on, at 42%. Are they at least giving you more staff or something? Where are we
Yeah.
at?
So just a couple of things on that, Senator. We have, as I mentioned, put forward supplementation requests for the last few years through the budget process, of which we have received supplementation, and it was around 50 million at last budget. And so we have been successful in receiving additional resources. We also sought to retain our ASL cap over the last 2 years when it should have been going down, but it was agreed that we could retain the cap at 16.15. And we will continue to put forward a case. But we did see on top of that submission for supplementation a further growth in the demand for claims, but also for our other services, particularly complex claims. So we did see a growth in requests for open arms and also our case management. So we have continued to put that case forward, and I'm certainly confident that people understand that growth in demand is real. But importantly, the contracted workforce, we will always have a contracted workforce, and that is important for us to be able to continue to respond to growth. So what we have done with the contracted workforce, and we've also tapped into the Australian Public Service surge workforce, is to make sure that we've got our delegates that are trained, and we are training those contractors up into the skills for our different pieces of legislation. As you know, Senator, the legislation is so complex, and we're training them up. So just a month ago, we reallocated $2 million to our claims area so they could bring on additional staff. We're also talking to our contracted staff who have been trained in some of our legislation to see if they would like to transfer into the public service, just to see what opportunities there might be to balance our workforce. So we've also been doing a lot about how we can respond to the growth in the claims internally.
Is DVA paying a premium to get labour hire in, and how many more full-time staff members could you hire if you're actually hiring them as public servants?
So we do know that it does cost more to engage a contractor than a public servant, but I don't have the figures. Sorry, Senator, I can take that on notice.
Figures, and when you do that, can I please get a figure on those contractors staying 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months? Please, on a percentage.
We do know the turnover is 13%, Ms Cole, is that right? Yes, so it's 13% turnover in our contracted workforce, whereas the department in the APS is sitting at about...
Is that annual? Is that your annual?
Annual
13%.
Yes. Sorry? 9% for the public service, so the full-time public servants in the department is 9% attrition, and in the contractors it's 13%.
So what's the average number of claims on hand for each full-time equivalent staff member working on the claims processing? And how many claims do they have on their books at the moment?
That's going to vary depending on the claim type. I do know that, but Ms Cole might be able to give you a breakdown of the different claim types.
Natasha Cole, First Assistant Secretary, Client Benefits Division, Senator. We have, basically what we have is an ideal number of allocations per delegate, and they range from around 80 to around 130. Sometimes we have some situations, and basically what happens is it's like a float in a sense, and as a case is completed, or say a delegate finishes 4 or 5 cases a week, another 5 cases will be allocated to that delegate in that, at the end of that week. So allocations happen once a week when they look at the finalisations from the week before. Those allocations will also be varied depending on whether the person's having a couple of days leave or they're required to go to training.
So what's the average? Okay, what's the average? Cause,
so it's 80 for some categories, and it goes up to 130 for other categories, depending on the type of case and the complexity.
Why am I hearing delegates that are managing more than 200 cases? And I've seen estimates that the number of claims on hand per full-time equivalent staff is about 227 today.
So
right
there's
now.
A difference between how many cases a delegate may have on hand versus a simple calculation, which is essentially the number of cases that we hold at any one time divided by the number of delegates will give you that sort of number around
Okay, how many
200-300.
delegates, could you please find out today, how many delegates got 200 plus cases?
How many delegates?
Yeah, I've got 200 plus cases on their desk right now. That would be wonderful.
I'll have to take that on
Yep,
notice,
that's
but I'm
fine.
only aware of a very small number, and those delegates are being assisted with that caseload.
I've heard that, did the department recently advise staff that caseloads would increase by 2 claims a week for each delegate?
There was a discussion within one of our offices in one of our caseload types around slightly increasing the number of claims per delegate to be assigned each week. That is being discussed by management with a number of delegates in that office, in that claim type at present.
Could you please let the committee know how many Comcare claims are in at the moment that have come from staffing within the DVA office for stress? Yeah, that'll be fine, thank you.
Sorry.
I've heard that an extra 88 clients have been assigned to the staff in Sydney in recent weeks, is that correct?
Sorry, I beg your pardon, I didn't hear the first part.
I've heard that an extra 88 clients have been assigned to the staff in Sydney in recent weeks, is that correct?
It would be difficult to answer that question, Senator, in the sense of cases are assigned to delegates all the time. So do you mean an additional 88 or do
I'm
you
sure,
mean...
sorry, I'm
there
sure
was
that you've
a-
heard from the CPSU that they're coming out, and
was
apparently you did that, so your caseloads look small before you got to estimates. And if that be the case, I'd be really,
We have not...
I'll tell you,
there
it
was...
would blow me away if what the CPSU is telling me about you offloading those cases to make them look like you weren't so stacked up. I think we're at our last end.
Senator, can I just correct the record on that? There was a rumour, as I understand it, floating around on social media that an additional 88 cases per week would be assigned to delegates.
It actually wasn't a rumour, it come from the CPSU union, it's come from out of those workers in the office.
Well,
I've spoken to them.
and that is not correct. 88 cases per week were not assigned to delegates, to a delegate or any delegate. As I said, they have a float, and at the moment they have on average between 5 to 7 cases, claims assigned to them per week.
Is it true that they are encouraging serving members to submit claims, that you're encouraging serving members to submit claims, but you will not look at them unless they are discharging and then still not being prioritised unless they are considered at risk of self-harm?
We have a prioritisation system which has a number of characteristics. It is applied whether a member is a serving member or a non-serving member. However, a serving member is usually in employment and able to get health services, so it's a slightly less likely that a serving member would be a prioritised case.
What happened to the agreement that Defence were going to make sure a lot of this was done beforehand? This agreement's already fallen through, has it?
No, it hasn't, Senator.
Right.
Medical discharges are always prioritised.
So,
Can I just pick up
but
on
only, but you are not, so how long are they taking when they're medically discharged? What's the average time? And are you, obviously, unless they're considered risk of self-harm, how long are they waiting? Is that where your 18 months comes in? That's how long they're waiting for their claim, once they get discharged?
Senator, if a person was medically discharged, their case will be prioritised and they'll be done hopefully before discharge or shortly after. If a member has chosen to leave voluntarily, then depending on their circumstances, their case may be prioritised or not prioritised. There is a long wait for those cases that are not prioritised at the present time, as the Secretary mentioned.
Could somebody inform me what the ARLI awards are?
the what, sorry, Senator?
The ARLI awards, do you have awards for your delegates about their performance within the system?
Sorry, I've not heard of that expression. Can we take that on notice, Senator?
Yeah, you
I'm
sure?
just looking to see if anybody else.
So I'm hearing that whatever awards are going on, so the staff aren't coming below what's required, that's causing them to delete emails about opening, not returning telephone calls, because they're absolutely inundated with cases.
Senator, So if I can just offer a few things there, that we know that there are a lot more claims than we've been able to keep up with, and I've already acknowledged that. We have seen a significant growth in the number of claims, and it's been double what we'd anticipated. What we are doing is supporting our staff, and to be frank, we're talking to the staff about what their experiences are, and as Ms Cole said, there was a suggestion that we were allocating the 88 veterans or claims per delegate, and that wasn't correct. And I've spoken myself with the Deputy Commissioner and her leadership team from that particular office. But also we're working with the staff. If they've got concerns, they can raise that with their managers and talk to them about the workload. We also have what I have as a staff reference group where I engage with the staff. I've had all staff addresses where they have raised these matters with me, and we've talked about what we can do to support them. We don't just leave the staff wondering what's happening. The leadership team are always talking to them and engaging with them, and if they are concerned about their workload, please, I'd encourage them to raise it with their team leader so that we can work with them. And I know that some staff have said that they are being impacted by the workload. They want to help veterans, which is absolutely wonderful, because that's why we're all working in the department, and they just go above and beyond. And it was interesting seeing the staff survey results from during a COVID period. I think it was 95% of the staff feel they want to go above and beyond because they want to support veterans and families. So we acknowledge there's been a growth in the number of claims.
Oh, okay, I think we know that. What percentage of staff dealing with liability and permanent impairment claims actually have more than 1 year of experience? Would I be able to get that in a percentage, please?
We'll have to take that on notice,
Yeah,
Senator.
that would be wonderful. Thank you. And is it, so assignment to a delegate, most of the assignment to a delegate is now taking 12 months or more, is that correct?
That's not correct. There are a number of different streams in initial liability, and most cases are assigned much faster than that. We have a small cohort of cases, which are TRIAC cases where we require specialised delegates to look after those cases at a more senior level, and those cases at the moment are our longest.
Okay,
Longest
so
waiting
from the time they're
cases.
assigned and they're put in the computer and then they're put on their desk, how long till they're actually actioned? That's probably a better question.
Once they're assigned and it's on their desk.
Yes, how long is it? You can assign it and you can
So
assign
no,
it,
they're
put
not
it in your computer.
assigned until the...
How long, you've got the name in there, how long until you actually you take action on that assignment notice?
Senator, cases are not assigned to a delegate, so they remain in a queue until the delegate is able to action that case. If there is a pause between when the delegate is given the case and when they start the case, that may be because of individual circumstances of that delegate.
What's the average timeline?
I can't tell you, Senator, without going back and examining the data.
Okay, if I could. So how long do they sit in that queue for?
That was the discussion I just had. It depends on the type of case. The longest cases that are waiting at the moment are the TRIAC cases, which require us, the most experienced of our delegates to do, and consequently there's a long wait for those delegates to be available at the moment for non-prioritised cases.
Yes, and I was about to just offer there, following on from what Ms Cole said, all claims that come into the department are screened, all of them. So we have a team that looks at every claim to determine whether it does need to be prioritised, and there are a number of factors that we look at for that prioritisation of claims. And that what we also try and do is give them to a delegate. So sometimes one veteran can have multiple initial liability claims.
Okay.
So what we do is give them to the delegate so they can see them from end to end through that process. There are going to be some, Senator, and we've acknowledged that, they're going to have longer wait times because they haven't been prioritised for a delegate action. But importantly, the message for veterans is if your circumstances change, please let us know because we will look at your claim. Don't ever forget that you've got access to non-liability health care for mental health treatment, and don't forget there's access to provisional access to medical treatment if you need it for the top conditions. If you're experiencing financial difficulties, there's a veterans payment.
Yep.
So I'd say, yes,
Okay,
we
okay,
know
so
there's going to be delays.
Okay,
Senator.
let's go into those veterans payments. How long are they waiting for that?
I think it's average 17 days for veterans payments.
And how many are putting in for those veterans payments and being rejected? Can I get a number on that, please?
Yeah, we do have
How long
those
is it
numbers.
taking them to get into open arms, on average? And what's the longest waiting period for them to get into open arms?
We've got all of that, Senator. So
Right.
would you like us to take veterans payment first? Because we can do
No,
that.
if you can, actually, if we
Put it on
can,
notice, Senator?
if you'd
But we
like
can do it tonight if you'd like, because we've
No,
got all that
I'll
data.
I'll just get you to take that on notice if that's okay. Have you investigated, we had a lot last time, I think it was in September, or maybe, no, I think it was last September. We had I mentioned something, or in a speech, I think, about Fletcher Davies. I believe Veterans Affairs were going to investigate my claims that I stated about what he was doing. Was there an investigation conducted on Fletcher Davies?
Sorry, Senator, I'm not certain of an answer to that one. I just need to have a look and see if Ms Rundle knows. No?
No, I don't know, but Dr Furman might.
Sorry, Senator, can we take that on notice? So that, I don't think that was October. I think that might have been an early one, but I am aware of your concerns you raised about Dr Davies, and I certainly did look into it, but that was a while ago.
Oh, okay, I just thought there was an investigation, if that, so I'd like to know that, and I'd also like to know if he actually got promoted.
Okay.
Thank
We'll
you.
take that on notice, Senator.
Has DVA investigated its whole department and taken any disciplinary action against DVA medical advisors or delegates who have been pressuring veterans treating doctors to manipulate their medical reports or downgrade their percentage system so the veteran gets less?
So certainly, Senator, the Chief Health Officer has had a look at all our medical advisors and looked at the model of how we deliver that medical advice. And importantly, it has been reinforced that our medical advisors do not change decisions of delegates. It's actually the delegate's decision, not a medical advisor's decision. And that has always been the case, and that
So you're
remains.
telling me that they're not ringing up their doctors, the treating doctors? I don't think you're answering my question. They're not ringing up their treating doctors and putting the pressure on the treating doctors to pull their numbers down, their percentages down.
That is correct. I am assured that is not happening, Senator.
What sort of investigation was done on that? Who investigated that?
There wasn't an investigation, but certainly
There wasn't an
the
investigation,
Chief Health
did you
Officer
just
and
say?
I did actually look into your claims that was happening, and it is not happening.
How did you look into that, Ms
We
Cousins?
spoke to a number of people and medical advisors, but I'm happy if the Chief Health Officer wants to come up and talk about her operating model, because we've also established some protocols.
I don't want to know
and
about
some
the
business
operating
rules.
model, I just want to know how that was investigated, please.
Well, we had conversations, Senator, with those that you
What
claimed were doing
conversations
that.
did you have with them?
And there's also training that's
What
involved with our
conversations
medical
did you have
advisors.
with them, Ms Cousins?
Well, I certainly had conversations with Dr Davies. Is that who you're referring to?
No. 1 minute you're telling me you're doing it with all of them, now you're just telling me it with Davies. What's going on here?
That was the only
Is
claim
the
that you
whole
raised
department
with me
being
was about
investigated over this?
No, Senator, you
Why
only
not?
raised Dr Davies with me, that you claimed he was doing that.
I just asked you, and I think if you go back and have a look at the transcript, that you've actually spoken to all of them,
So, Dr
Or
not coming up?
look, if that was accidentally said,
So-
can we clarify the record now, Ms Cousins, as to what you meant to say if you didn't say what
Certainly.
is being asserted?
It was not
So can
intended
you-
to say I spoke with all of them, Chair, not at all.
why have they not all been spoken to?
So I'll just ask Dr Furman, the Chief Health Officer, just to talk about her new operating model around her discussions with medical advisors.
Did you discuss it with have you seen all the medical advisors? Have you discussed this with all the medical advisors, investigated and asked them, every single one of them, whether they are doing this?
Professor Jenny Furman, Chief Health Officer, Senator. In answer to your question, when the question arose about Dr Davies, I was actually not working in the department during that period, so I cannot tell you firsthand what that investigation was. I'm happy to look into it further. I know it was investigated, but I can't give you those details today. However, as the Secretary has indicated, we are implementing a operating model which helps us to avoid any instances where it might be seen that questions are being asked that might be misunderstood, and that's including improving our clinical governance. So that includes how do we engage with our clinical providers, how do we ring them up if we need to talk to them, who's present when that happens. The substance of those conversations is around clarifying what DVA can provide or clarifying what the legislation says. It's not about disputing what a clinician's providing to us.
Can you tell me whether DVA ever rang up John Gallivan and spoke to him about what he said about Fletcher Davies?
I'm unable to tell you, Senator. I don't know. I can look into it, but I don't know, Senator.
If you can get back to me on that, I imagine if you were doing an investigation, you'd have to ask him. So, I'd like to go into PTS dogs, if we can, now. Where are we at with the PTS dogs, please, and how many people have one, and how many providers do we have now?
Did you catch all of that, Ms Rundle?
I did.
Good.
Did, thank you, Chair.
Sorry, I should have waited for you to
All
sit
right.
down. Sorry, Vicky.
Vicky Rundle, Deputy Secretary, Department of Veteran Affairs. Senator, we've currently got 24 approved dogs who are matched with veterans at the moment. We've got another 100 in the program working to get their dogs matched and getting them to the next stage. But we've got 24 who've passed the PAT. That's the test, the final test that they need to pass. The other thing is we also have the La Trobe trial of assistance dogs, and currently we've got 14 veterans in that that's also been, they've been matched with dogs as well. We've got 4 providers, and I can give you their names and details if you wish.
No, if you could just give me their names, so if you don't mind, and then I can put that out there on social media so they know that.
And Mr. Landon, is this just a dog program as opposed to a cat program as well?
Yes, no. This is an assistance.
I hope there is. I hope there is.
I should have said earlier that this is an assistance dogs program for veterans with PTSD, and as an adjunct to the rest of their treatment, those who are eligible for that.
Maybe you can supply that with me
I
on
can.
notes if you like.
I
Thank you,
can.
just so I can get that out there. How many applications have you received for the PTS dog program?
I've got it here, Senator, if you just give me a moment and I'll find it.
And there's at least one in Tasmania, is that right?
So
There's
we've had 246 eligible requests, total veterans accepted 213, declined 16, and total, as Ms Rundle said, she gave you the numbers of 124. 100 dogs confirmed in training and 24 allocated.
And do we know where those 24 are allocated?
I think we do, Chair.
Are there a couple in Tasmania?
I'm not sure, Senator. Oh, here we are. Here are the states. Thank you. So we have one in training at the moment in Tasmania, but we don't have one yet that's completed their last test.
Right.
Are they training them? Is each state got a trainer yet, or how's it go?
There are 4 providers, and each of the providers is based in a particular state. So there's a provider in South Australia, one in Victoria, one in Queensland, and one in the ACT. Now, a couple of them provide dogs mostly for those states. The other providers are starting to extend their reach and provide dogs outside of their states, and they are national and want to have a national reach. We've been thinking about how we expand even further the supply, and we've been looking at their contracts and looking at making their contracts a little more amenable for them so that they feel like they've got the capital that they can use to expand.
Okay, how come, we've had young diggers in the game for a long time, they're probably one of the first ones, why have they been pushed to the side in their dog squad? Why are you not using them?
Who is that, Senator?
The young diggers and the dog squad who have been running the program for many, many years.
That's, I think, are they one of the programs I think that Defence might use? We use providers. I'll tell you how we came about the 4 providers that we have. We ran procurement. We ran 2 procurements actually to extend by a further 2 providers. But we've gone through a proper external procurement process, and anyone that we have has been found to be suitable there. Now, I can't tell you whether they were in that procurement process.
Okay, could you find out for me, please? Because they have been in the game for a long time, and apparently they're now sitting out, people have relied on them for a long time, and it'd be a shame that, you know, considering they're run by veterans, the young diggers and the dog squad, that they weren't in the game anymore. So I was just wondering, could you please have a look at that?
Yes.
I'm not having a go, but it just says on your website that you might deny access to a PTS dog if a veteran, if they've had a suicide attempt in the previous 12 months. Can I ask why that decision has been made? I would have thought that a dog would help them and give them a distraction. Why has that decision been made?
There's every time when a dog is declined, Senator, we always use the advice that we've received from the specialist, so that at that point it's usually deemed that the veteran isn't able to or isn't well enough to be able to either get the benefit of the dog at that time, because they may need further other treatment, adjunct treatment, to help them to be more stable, or they may not be able to care for the dog at that time. It doesn't prevent them from asking to be assessed again a little bit later on, and it's not a high number when you look at it that have been declined.
Mm-hmm.
But why would you put that up on your website?
Yeah,
I don't
I'm just a bit
understand. I would have thought that potentially, basically you're saying a one size fits all.
Yeah, don't come
and
and
I
feed.
would have thought telling people, well, if you attempt it, don't even bother for 12 months.
Yeah.
Just thinking out aloud, I would have thought having a less rigid, and I have no reason to doubt Senator Lambie's version of what's on your website.
No,
Can we make a gratuitous suggestion? You soften the language so it's considered on a case-by-case basis?
I think that's a very good point, Senator, and I'm happy to take that.
I was going to do it. I just don't think it needs to be there. I mean, you know, if they've just tried it and they've picked up, it was just you know, there's, for whatever reasons, sometimes it's just the stupidity, the drugs, the alcohol, and they get back up, and I'd hate to see them be put back for 12 months.
No, I agree.
When it might give them a bit of light, that's all.
It's a good point, Senator. And I mean, we all can see the benefits of the program, and we want it to work, so thank you.
Good.
How many pharmacists work at DVA Pharmacist Hotline?
There are currently, are you talking about the pharmacy hotline? There were about 20 pharmacists based in the Brisbane office, and I just need to find my brief. I do have the number here, and Mr. Garrity might also pop up.
This in relation to the change to our contracting model up in Brisbane, I think, Senator, so we'll be able to answer those questions.
One thing we have done while Mr. Garrity is just finding his papers, Senator, is we've just made the contracts for we used to, still do currently until till April, we used to hire our pharmacists and on that line and assistants. We used to hire them from contracting, you know, specialist companies. And what we did was we did a review, and we found that more contemporary practice is, and it is a practice in health and defence and other areas, is that using pharmacy advisors for the bulk of the calls that are fairly straightforward and where the guidelines are very clear and not contestable, then you can get a better service and a more responsive service. We can put pharmacy assistants on that line, but still employ pharmacists as well as a backup. and we can get secondary advice from the pharmacist, particularly for the more complex scripts and requests from doctors. And just check with Mr. Garrity.
Staffing levels, yeah.
Sorry, Mark Garrity, Acting First Assistant Secretary, Client Engagement and Support Services Division. Senator, there's currently, under the current arrangements, 20 pharmacists who are engaged as part of the Veterans Affairs Pharmaceutical Advisory Centre.
Okay, thank you. I just want to, sorry, I'll have to just go back here before I go any further, but how long are the veterans, once you've approved those, once you've approved the dogs, how long are they having to wait to get the dog trained before they can get started? Like, once you've approved it, how long is it taking before they can actually get started?
It varies depending upon the provider, because so it can take up to between 18 and 24 months actually, but some providers, and one particularly, acquires the dogs at a different stage of their life, and so they've sort of got a head start, if you like, and so that provider doesn't take quite so long as some of the others.
So is that to assign the dog? Sorry, are you doing it, you're assigning the dog, so it's taking anywhere between 18 and 24 months?
No, I'm sorry, I thought you meant to train.
No, that's all right, I could take that anyway, but what about the assigning of the dog?
Well, I don't, Mr. Garrity might have that figure. He does,
Yes,
okay. Good.
So it does depend on the assignment of the veteran to one of the 4 suppliers. They each have a different arrangement and a different process, but essentially once a veteran is approved to participate in the program and then assigned to one of the 4 suppliers, the matching process commences straight away, and that assessment process allows the supplier to identify an appropriate dog based on the individual circumstances of the veteran. And as Ms. Rundle said, the actual sourcing process of the dog then varies by supplier. Some have access to more mature dogs and can commence training virtually straight away. Other suppliers actually then source dogs from breeders and then commence a training process, which takes longer before the actual pairing with the veteran.
Okay, I'm going to move away from that now. Can I please get, you probably need to take this on notice, how many veterans are being paid medical compensation for psychological trauma as a result of sexual assault on base? Can we please go back the last 4 years, if that's okay? Can we just, I don't need any more details, I just need to know what the numbers are looking like.
We'll have a look.
We'll take that on notice.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Also need to talk to Defence and have a look at what we can pull together there.
Yeah, if it's I don't imagine that's even a number. I'd like to get an age and gender, but I understand if that's going to be too much. But if I can at least get those numbers over the last 4 years, I just want to see where that's sitting. Could you please tell me, because I can't tell anyone and I can't find an actual page for her. There's a lot on her, but nobody seems to know anything about her. No one's seeing her. What is the Veterans Family Advocate actually doing?
Oh, so Gwen Cherney, who's the Veterans Family Advocate Senator, she's doing incredible work. She's out and about talking to families. She's also on call. Families connect with her if they're concerned about something. She was speaking at the National Commissioners Symposium recently. She has visited over in the West and Holsworthy and Darwin, just to engage with the families to make sure that they're aware of what's available for families. But importantly, she also sits on the Repatriation Commission and the Military Rehabilitation and Compensation Commission, and she provides input to any policy development for families. She's developed a family strategy so she can engage families, so she is doing a lot. I will make sure that you've got access to her
Would
website.
I be able to, why isn't there a website so people are seeing what she's doing, like the Commissioner herself?
Why isn't there?
Why isn't there, yeah, so she can, if she's going somewhere, she can alert people she's going.
Okay, I'll make sure that we're able to communicate that, Senator. I'll look at that.
That'd be lovely. And I just have one more question. Could you please tell me what she's getting paid?
Oh, Senator, I'll have to take that on notice. I don't have that in front of me, but it is reported in our annual report, I believe, of Commissioners, but I'll certainly take that on notice.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Senator Lambie.
Thank
Senator
you,
Reyes.
Chair.
Good evening, Ms Costin and colleagues, and the new acting minister, anyway.
Acting in this forum. Thank you for the welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. I'm going to try not to cover the same ground as Senator Lambie, and I've tried to edit my questions as we go, so I apologise for any crossover. There is some. We had quite the discussion at the last estimates, and there's been some backwards and forwards in terms of questions on notice since. Could you just set out for me, Ms Cosson, though, how the department's tracking against the 90-day time frame for MERCA claims, including initial liability claims and incapacity claims against that 90-day threshold, I suppose?
So, Senator, I'll ask Ms Rundle to
Thanks, Ms Rundle.
read those out into different claim types.
Now, I just will go to it, and I may, ask my colleague to join us. I think it's 31% of MERCA and DIRCA IL claims are meeting the time frame. I realise DIRCA's not the 90 days. I realise that's MERCA.
But 90 days for them.
But
yes.
I'll just check with Ms Cole while she's looking.
So the 90-day timeframe only applies to MERCA IL and MERCA PI. MERCA INCAP actually has a target of 50 days. In terms of MERCA IL, I have a medium processing time and the percentage of cases that are currently meeting the target set in the annual report, but I don't have the number of the percentage of cases that are meeting the 90-day mark, and so I can provide that to you on notice, Senator.
I actually have found here, Ms Cole, I think, on the attachment to one of the briefs, MERCA initial liability decided within, this was July to December of last year. MERCA initial liability claims decided within target were 25%, and MERCA permanent impairment was 42%.
And is that worse or better than the previous years?
Now I've got them for the previous years. Let me just have a look for you. Right, it's worse. The initial liability is worse than the previous year by 20%, and the permanent impairment is better than the previous year by 21%.
Still significantly behind the target.
That's correct, Senator, and the Secretary talked a little while ago about how the MERCA initial liability particularly has been the area most affected, and that's because we've had so much more interest, which is good, of veterans putting in claims because of all of the things which we've done in veteran-centric reform and also the early engagement model. So we found that that's where the greatest backlog has been. But the permanent impairment actually improved by 21% between those 2 years.
So that
to 42% of claims been assessed within the 90 days.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's what this.
What the table says, yeah.
Yes.
So, Senator, absolutely. During COVID last year, we were very focused on permanent impairment, and I know Ms Cole did a lot of work about bringing that backlog down, and that's why, as Ms Rundle said, there was an improvement of that 21%, particularly in MERCA permanent impairment. But yes, we're not meeting some of the targets, but some were actually improved on last year, and some of the other claims types, there's quite a different group of claims types.
But if it... So one category has improved, another category's got worse, but they're all substantially behind where they should be.
Some of the claims types are actually ahead of their time because every claim,
well, you hope so. It's an average.
Yeah, most of the claim types have different days though to For example, Mercury was 90 days. That was as part of our Veterans Recognition Bill. But some of the other claims have less days or more days. It just depends on the actual claim.
It just seems that there's, I don't want to denigrate the work that's going on, but it just seems that there is a tolerance for not meeting the time frame that would not exist in other industries. I mean, I don't know of anywhere else that that would contemplate not meeting the time frame that's set out for these kinds of services.
Our timeframes aren't actually legislated, Senator, so we do, though, the best we can to meet those times, and we actually try and do better than that. I think we've talked about the growth, and it has been difficult to actually achieve the timeframes, but we do monitor them, and I know Ms Cole reports monthly on how we're tracking, and reports just about weekly or fortnightly to the Minister on how we're tracking, so we do actually take them very seriously, and that's why it was important for us to do the modelling for demand and resourcing and reassigning our resources to try and get on top of that demand. But we have had incredible growth. It's over 200% in the last few years.
Yes, and I've listened carefully through a series of estimates, and trying to, I can see that there are significant number of people in the organisation working hard to do better. I actually don't point the finger at the organisation. I've got real concerns about the resourcing and the constraints within which the organisation works. Is it true that veterans are currently waiting on average for 178 days for Mercer initial liability claims?
I'll have to ask Ms Cole to ask what the average time is, but certainly...
And 186 days for permanent impairment claims to be processed, is that...
So there certainly are long wait times, as I have mentioned, but importantly what we do up front is that screening to prioritise those claims so that those that are in most need of quick progress of claims, we will assign them and have them progressed. But you're right, some are waiting...
Sorry to interrupt, Ms Costin, but doesn't that mean that there's a group who are assessed who come through the process a bit more quickly?
Yes.
But that necessarily means there's a group who
take
more time than they otherwise might, and that has its own consequences, doesn't it?
That's correct, Senator, and we're very conscious of that, that the more we're prioritising those that aren't being prioritised will have a longer wait, and that's why it's important to us to get a message out there that if circumstances change, please let us know, but also to continue to reinforce there's that provisional access to medical treatment if they need it. There's also the, as I mentioned, non-liability healthcare for mental health treatment and veterans payment. We can do a lot while your claim is being progressed. We're very conscious of those wait times, and Ms Cole might now have an answer to that specific question, do you? You've got it, have you?
I think I can see you're still looking, but I've got it in we've got the median, I've got the median days,
yes.
So I've got the median if that helps. Mercer IL, in the month of December, the median days for Mercer IL was 190. For Mercer permanent impairment was 137.
Yes, and my different figures might reflect that mine are apparently average figures, not means.
Yeah, so the average would change that.
So 514 initial liability claims on hand for longer than 12 months. Does that sound right?
That would sound right. Absolutely, Senator, but I'd like to take it on notice to confirm all the figures because I do have in front of me what the figures were in December for claims on hand. And was that Mercer initial liability you mentioned?
Yes.
So we received gross claims we received to July to December was 22,000. We determined 17,831 of those claims, and we have 25,000, which we talked about earlier, still on hand. So the timeliness within 90 days, as Ms Rundle says, was 25.3%. And we always check quality and error rates, and quality was 86.6%, and I think the acceptance rate was up about over 80% as well for Merkur. 85% acceptance of those claims.
So once you get there, it's 85%, it's getting through the process.
That's correct, Senator.
Processing time's calculated from when the claim is allocated or when it's received?
From when it's received, Senator.
Yeah, we don't stop the clock, Senator. That was also an important point. Sometimes when we receive a claim, we actually do have to go back to the veteran or seek additional information and evidence, and that can take quite a bit of time on occasions, and but we don't stop the clock. It keeps running from receipt of the claim.
Error rates, what are your targets for error rates?
All of our processing types have a goal of 95% correctness rate.
And has that target stayed the same? How long has that been in place?
That target's been in place for some years now, as I understand it.
And what's the, do you have a headline error rate, or do you map that against categories of work or
We
claims?
map it against the major compensation categories, and it's outlined in the annual report each year.
Can you give me a quick headline run through what they are?
I can, Senator. They're always, I may have to take it on notice, because I don't, hang on, I think I do have it.
Yes.
I beg your pardon. Thank you. So the major categories are VEA, disability pension, 91.1, war widows, 93.4, DIRCA initial liability, 92.8, permanent impairment, DIRCA permanent impairment, 90.3, DIRCA incapacity, 89.8. This is last year's results.
Yes.
Merkur IL is 90.2, Merkur permanent impairment is 83.2, and incapacity was 85.8.
And do those last categories where you're more short from the target reflect the complexity of those claims? Is that there's what is different about that?
Yes, so incapacity claims are incredibly complicated.
Okay.
There's over 100 pages of legislation for incapacity in Merkur alone. The main difficulties we have in incapacity is errors in the correct pay rate, which is to do with the complexity of military payment systems over time.
Okay, so where the big gap is for the department is in claims processing and waiting times. The error rates, there is a gap, but the big issue for you is processing claims quickly, and that has obvious consequences for veterans. Long processes. So we know from our previous discussion that 42% of the department staff, including 50% of claims processing staff, are now contractors provided by labour hire companies. That's right, isn't it?
That's correct.
And has that figure got higher or lower since we last spoke?
Good question, Senator. I think it would be about the same.
So last we spoke in March.
I beg your pardon?
The last Senate estimates were in November, and so there hasn't been a major change in our staffing numbers.
Hasn't been a major change, or it just hasn't been reported since then?
No, Senator, there hasn't been a major change in our staffing numbers between November and March.
So back then, 1,246 labour hire staff.
So, Senator, I can tell you the numbers now, if you like. Our ASL cap 1615. We're tracking at a year to date of 1625 permanent, and our head count is 2952. So our non-APS, so the contractor 1070. And importantly, if I can, the 42% that's referred to as our contractor staff, I should highlight that 42% can also include specialist medical advisors. It includes some of the
yes, and the group that I'm in, sorry to interrupt, Ms. Costin, I'm just conscious of the time, but 50% of claims processing staff is right, isn't it?
That's correct.
How is that, I'm going to come to some of the cost issues, but how in an organisation where you have to manage a team that's capable of pulling together to solve complex problems, to work with people who are, some of them very vulnerable. How can you possibly do that with 46 labour hire companies?
So can I just say that our labour hire workforce is very good, Senator. I don't want to suggest that they're not doing a good job, because they are working as part of a team, and we consider our whole workforce as a workforce. And I know that Ms Cole and Ms Rundle have regular training sessions with all staff, which includes our contracted staff. They have, even during COVID, where it was all done online or remotely, the staff are engaged, and importantly, they're connected to delegates and part of a team. And I respect a lot of the work our contracted staff do, and that's why we're saying to them at the moment, if there are opportunities with ASL positions as they may come up, because they've been trained in progressing our claims, if they'd like to transfer.
But sorry to interrupt. I mean, you say, it was listing before, you've got a sort of turnover rate, circa 9% or something,
13.
I think.
Oh, 8.
Yeah, 9% in the APS group.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's important that we're really careful not to denigrate the work of contractor staff. I absolutely accept that. And I don't think anybody would denigrate the work of the permanent staff. And I'm sure that there's a honest effort from management to try and do the best that can be done in these circumstances, but it's just not serious, is it? If 50% claims processing staff are not engaged permanently, anybody who's a veteran or a family of a veteran listening to that knows it's not a serious commitment. I mean, how does that? How can it be sustained for any longer than it has?
Well, as I mentioned, we have gone back and received supplementation. And I should correct what I said before. It wasn't 50 million last budget. It was 54.8 over 2 years at last budget.
But not additional ASL cap.
No, but we were able to. We put a case forward to retain our cap, because it was actually meant to drop off.
Which means you stick at your 50%. I mean, this is the problem. It's not. Can't blame the contractors.
Oh no.
And we weren't. The only people that people should be pointing the finger at here are the people who are holding you back from staffing the department at the level that it should be.
We'll keep doing the modelling, Senator, and...
I'm sure you'll keep asking. I'll keep asking here, but it's the person to the immediate left of you who's in a position to make a difference on those questions, and nothing has changed.
Perhaps that's an opportunity for me to make a contribution, Senator Ayres.
If you like.
Thank you, Senator Fierravanti-Wells. It is true to say that there are approximately 42% of people in DVA's non-APS workforce.
50% of the claims processing staff.
Well, if that's the evidence that's been given by those those to my right, I defer to their knowledge. The point, though, is that there have been unusual circumstances that are the product of the quite deliberate and very effective outreach that has been done by the department to make sure that more and more of our veterans community are being embraced by this system and supported by it. That has led to a doubling in the number of claims. That means there has been a need to quickly and flexibly put on a lot more help in order to provide the service levels that are desirable to be able to process those claims as timely as is possible. Now, we're first to acknowledge that that is a heavy burden, and we are prepared to acknowledge that there are drawbacks sometimes to having to use a non-APS workforce, but there are advantages too, and the ability to bring on surge assistance to provide
the kind of support that our veterans need in a timely kind of way has been supported by $54 million over 2 financial years just in that increase, that surge capacity for claims processing. That's nothing to be dismissed. It's an acknowledgement of this government's commitment to doing the right thing by veterans, and in the circumstances, it's an example of where non-APS assistance is actually really adding value. It's providing that kind of flexible add-on help that's needed to make sure that we get through this this surge in demand, while making sure that we can provide stability to the permanent workforce.
Minister, look, I know that that's the argument that you've got to make, but it does...
Well, it's not the argument, it's the fact.
It does you no credit. It does the government no credit. This is not a new proposition. It is not a new problem. It has been going since 2013.
Well, respectfully, I disagree with you.
Everybody in the community knows that 50% of claims processing staff been employed through a labour hire company, people without the capacity to secure a mortgage for their homes, without decent employment conditions, employed by goodness knows who, 46 different labour hire companies. Evidence from the department. Don't interrupt me. Evidence. I listen to you. Evidence from the department is 12% additional cost. It is wholly indefensible. And if I was you, I'd be setting about making the argument to lift the ASL cap so that veterans actually get looked after, so there's some decency behind all the rhetoric.
Is there a question, or is this a speech?
What I want to know is...
Are you giving gratuitous advice,
are you going to make an argument to lift the ASL cap?
What I'm going to do...
Are you going to make an argument to lift the ASL cap?
Please. Senator Van has got 10 minutes of questions. You've been going for quite some time, so can we just wind
I've been
it
going
up?
for about sort of 20% of the time of the previous questions. I've got some more
so
questions
can we
to
just
go
wind
on.
it up,
And quite frankly,
because we have to finish. Minister, do you want to complete what you've got to say?
Thank you, Senator Fierravanti-Wells. I was concerned that I wasn't going to get to conclude my answer. While Senator Ayres is entitled to his perspective, it is a perspective shaped entirely by the demands of his union masters, when in fact there are many people who choose and indeed prefer to have their own business that contracts, for instance. I speak to many people in our community who like the ability to be their own boss, who like the ability to choose their own terms, and while the permanent 9-to-5 arrangement suits some people, for other people the arrangements of labour hire or being an independent contractor suit them just fine. It is wholly indefensible to use your language, David. Senator Ayres, to say that all people must fit your hardcore union mould. What matters every day of the week is that we are providing the service and the assistance that veterans need. And with $54 million of surge capacity over 2 years to deal with the larger than ever number of veterans we are assisting, and we are doing so sincerely, I take umbrage at the aspersion you cast on the sincerity of this government's commitments both to the people who work for it and the veterans it supports.
Well, let's look at another example of the government's commitment to veterans. In the lead up to the 2019 election, Mr Chester and the Prime Minister made a commitment that 6 veteran wellbeing centres would be up and running this year. Secretary, it's 2021 now. How many have been completed?
So, Senator, the 6 wellbeing centres that were identified with $30 million allocated to those, we know that the Perth Wellbeing Centre has been opened.
Yes.
Oasis up in Townsville, which importantly is a partnership as well with Queensland Government, is expected to be open Anzac Day. and I know Ms Pope will be able to give all the details on the other wellbeing centres, but Wodonga, we've entered into the partnership with RSL Victoria for that wellbeing centre.
And when will it open?
I don't know whether we have a date, Ms Pope, do we, on that? You can take that.
Sorry, Senator, a bit of a quick switch over. Kate Pope, Deputy President of the Repatriation Commission and Head of Strategic Policy and Planning in DVA. As Ms Cosson said, the first centre to open was the West Australian Centre in Perth, which opened in November last year. The next two that will open are Oasis in Queensland, in Townsville, which is expected to open mid-April to mid-May, and a similar timeline for the South Australian Centre at the Door Park site in Adelaide. The remaining three centres in Wodonga, Nowra and Darwin are at various stages of development. The Darwin Centre will be developed by Mates for Mates, and they are delivering services out of temporary premises while they work towards a site to take forward for the Darwin Centre. Nowra, it's RSL Life Care, and they have a location for a permanent centre which they will be constructing, and they are looking for premises for temporary service delivery until such time as that property is developed and available to them. And in the case of Wodonga, the Hume Veterans Information Centre is working with RSL Victoria. They have a couple of sites that they're finalising in Wodonga, where they'll be establishing the centre and taking it forward there. The requirement of the grant agreement is that the centres are up and running by June 2022.
So if I heard you correctly, one open,
Perth is open.
Two in
more,
prospect.
That's right. And the other three are various stages of development. At various stages of development would be, right, I think, about the right way of describing it. That's right, Senator.
But as Ms Pope said, Senator, the grant agreement was that they would be up and running by June 2022. So I don't think there was an intention to have them up and running in within a year, because it had to, because they're different partnership models.
There is certainly a gap between the expressed intention in 2019 and the parameters that you're working within, and that is, I think what the release said was only the coalition can be trusted to deliver for veterans and their families. So we've got the rhetoric, but a gap between the rhetoric and the delivery. Just one more time. I don't have any further questions, Chair.
All right, Senator Van, and then Senator Fierravanti-Wells.
Thank you kindly, Chair, and thank you, Ms Cosson. Ms Cosson, can you tell us about what DVA is doing to prevent suicide prevention right now? As in a sample of some of the programs you're running.
Sure. So Ms Pope and perhaps Dr Hodson could also join me.
Of course.
Because, Senator, what we do have, as you know, $230 million spent on mental health and suicide prevention programs.
And just because of time constraints, even just a quick sample,
sure.
The rest can be taken
on
notice.
We have a unique service in the Commonwealth with Open Arms, who provides mental health services to veterans and families born out of the Vietnam veterans. So veterans and families counselling, 24/7 support. And Open Arms has a range of self-help tools, but also programs that veterans and families can access. And we are seeing an incredible take-up of Open Arms support, and particularly since the introduction of the Peer Support Program, which is a really powerful program around Australia where people with lived experience can make that connection to veterans and families as they might need them. But also, more broadly, we have the Veterans Family Advocate we've talked about, wellbeing centres, non-liability healthcare, which is really important, that veterans payment that was introduced to help veterans who might be experiencing financial difficulty and waiting for a claim to be progressed. We have a whole client support framework that's been implemented over the last few years, which has different levels of support: case management, which is the wellbeing support program, triage and connect, So they're just a few. There's a lovely placemat I'm happy to table for the committee that outlines a range of those programs that we have that cover mental health, but also the suicide prevention, Senator.
Yes, please. I'd welcome you to table that. Ms Cosson, the other week, the Interim National Commissioner held a research symposium on preventing suicide prevention. I was the only parliamentarian that was there, and I note and thank you for being there for the whole 2 days as well. It was an incredible experience, and a lot was learned, certainly by myself, but seeing some of the work that's being done by the National Commissioner was really eye-opening. And speaking to a number of the attendees, I think there was, about 100, 150?
In the
maybe
room,
more.
Senator, then online as well.
Of course, online. The mood really changed between who people were positive about the National Commissioner at the beginning and at the end. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think once the National Commissioner outlined her credentials as well and expressed what she can do if she had the powers, they did change their mind. Absolutely.
And there were some incredible speakers there. The National Family Advocate that Senator Lambie was asking about before, to hear her story and then to hear about the work that she's doing right now, I found one of the most moving, most incredible things that I've listened to. And I've had the opportunity to speak to her since then and to hear in depth about the work that she's doing. I think anyone, and I asked Senator Lambie to reach out to Ms Cherney and speak to her, I think she'd be absolutely amazed. One of the stats that I heard, and I can't remember the actual number, so coming to a question, one of the stats I heard about at that symposium was quite a high number of the percentage of suicides that didn't have any clinical support for 12 months or no mental health diagnosis for 12 months or more before that. Do you know that percentage off the top of your head?
That was from Christine Morgan's presentation as the keynote
right.
address, and Ms Pope might have those numbers because she's working very closely with Christine Morgan.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, Senator, but I think...
We can
take that on notice.
That's fine. Speaking about the National Commissioner and the debate that's going on between the National Commissioner and a Royal Commission, if you had to choose Ms Cosson as the Secretary for DVA, what model would you choose?
Well, all I will say on that one, Chair, Senator, is I just want to find ways to reduce the incidence of suicide.
And if you had to choose between one model but you had to wait for it, or a model now, which would you choose?
Well, that's really asking the Secretary to talk on policy matters, which I would invite you not to...
Certainly, Chair.
Yeah,
I'm happy to withdraw that. I'll try this one, but please tell me, Chair, if you think it's out of order. It's rumoured by some, and I'd say this is a very small number in the veteran community, that DVA doesn't want a Royal Commission because it has something to hide that either a Royal Commissioner or a National Commissioner might find. Would you welcome a Royal Commission or a National Commissioner?
Senator, we've welcomed any review or inquiry into the department to find ways to better support our veteran community. I'm open, and we've had, I think, at least 13 reviews in the last few years. The Productivity Commission report, in Senate inquiries, the constant battle, coronial inquest, trying to tell us what we can do to fix any of the systemic issues that we know exist. I welcome any scrutiny to assist us with that joint purpose to reduce the incidence of suicide.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Senator Fierravanti-Wells to take us out.
Thank you. Can I just ask you, Senator Abetz has written to you, written to Minister Chester regarding the Republic of Vietnam campaign medal and attached correspondence from Mr Richard Barry, OAM. Mr Barry's also written to me, and therefore I just wondered if you could take on notice and investigate that, and I'm sure that perhaps when you do write back, or Minister Chester writes back to Senator Abetz, I wonder if you could also copy me in on that correspondence?
Absolutely, Senator.
And lastly, following on from questions that Senator Van and others put in relation to the issue of a Royal Commission, similar to what's happened with the Aged Care Royal Commission, there is nothing to preclude a Royal Commission that may be held to make a series of recommendations which could in itself include a standing commissioner of the kind that the legislation is proposing, or a variation thereof. Do you agree, Ms Cousins, with that?
Absolutely, Senator. That could be a recommendation of a Royal Commission.
Yeah, as could a whole range of other things that potentially we may not have considered.
Absolutely, Senator.
Thank you. And it's now being 11 o'clock.
That concludes the committee's examination of the Department of Veterans Affairs and the Defence portfolio. I thank the Minister and officers for their attendance, and Hansard and broadcasting staff. The committee will begin its hearings tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. with the Foreign Affairs and Trade portfolio. The hearing is adjourned. Thank you all.